in the United States, on the average, about 1 out of 7 people will suffer from substance abuse. But in my family, the ratio was just a little bit different. It was 3 out of 4. And for each of us in the family, we all had our different experience. But the common theme, I would say, is that substance abuse and mental health issues can happen to anyone in any family at any time. And there's a lot of people who don't know that, and that's what somehow can kind of increase the possible danger. So we're going to talk about a lot of things in this next 30 minutes, but that was kind of the genesis of why I do what I do. For me, I was a high-functioning alcoholic, which meant a lot of people who knew me weren't really aware of it. I was with IBM for 38 years, had a good career. I was a husband and a dad, but I was an alcoholic, nevertheless. In other words, alcohol was more in control of me than I was of it. My wife was my drinking buddy for a while, and she had a different journey. She had worked when we first met. She stayed home with the kids. But then when the kids moved away, a little bit of her sense of purpose moved away. So depression set in, and she found a way to feel better from that for a while, which included alcohol. But it was darkest with my older son, who was a great kid growing up. He really was. And once he got into middle school, we had moved to a different school, and he made the choice to be a part of a crowd that was doing some dangerous things. So he went on a 10-year journey that was very, very dark at times, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. And then somehow the other son navigated his way through life. I mean, raised the same way, same DNA, but made consistently good choices and has lived a wonderful life his whole time. So the point being, substance abuse and mental health issues happen to any family and can happen to anyone, including many people that I can promise. So for us, it led into what I call the dark ages of our family, which were depression and alcohol and drugs with our son, and those leads to financial problems and marriage problems and all kinds of things. And for me, I said I was a high-functioning alcoholic, so my life wasn't coming apart, right? I wasn't getting arrested, or I didn't have any, a DUI or a wreck or anything like that. But I got to a point where I just couldn't live with it anymore. I started thinking, so I'm going to be, 75 or 80, 85 years old, and I'm going to be looking back on my life and think, well, Steve, you had a pretty good career, but then you spent a lot of your waking time having a pretty good buzz, And that idea was frightening to me, to think that would be my legacy. My wife, it was more tumultuous. As I said, after the kids left, depression set in with her for a while. And she found one way to feel better, which is how, a lot of people do what they do to feel the way they want to feel. So her situation got dark for a while. But she and I quit at the same time. I lose track, say 18 years ago or so. But with our older son, if you had met him when he was young, great kid, smart, popular, wonderful athlete. But somewhere in late middle school or high school, he started hanging around with a different crowd. And he was raised in a Christian school until he was kindly asked to leave that school. But he made some bad choices, and his situation got very, very dark for a while. So again, if you no longer have permission to think that it can't happen in your family or into the families because it's happening all around us. The good news is, for me, it actually turned out to be a life-changing, wonderful experience. I thought the world of recovery was invigorating. It was exciting to me. I learned a lot of incredible things. And the question that kind of changed the course of my life was, I thought, why do we wait till people crash and burn and tear their lives apart and then send them through 2 years of recovery? I was actually trained in school as an industrial engineer, which is kind of a process orientation. I thought, why don't we move upstream in the process? Why don't we teach people how to live this way before their lives come apart? And that question just fascinated me. Other things I got out of recovery is I actually learned how to live life a lot better. I found out, not only was I addicted to alcohol, I was addicted to work and control and perfectionism. A lot of people I talk to don't see those as addictions. They don't think of as addiction. But addiction is a compulsive habit you do over and over again that has negative consequences, and you find it hard to stop. Well, guess what? We're all addicted to something, right? We all have things that we do. So I found out all about that, and I learned to live life better, to make better choices and find more peace, joy, and purpose. I just had to kind of go through some tough time to get to that point. So an epiphany is a moment of sudden insight. We all have them. You have little ones, medium ones, and big ones. That aha moment where all of a sudden something hits you much more clearly than it did before. I'm going to talk about 3 epiphanies I had in that process. The first is that the best way to treat addiction is to prevent it. Because amazingly, recovery works. There are tens of millions of people who've gotten better. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. And there's no magic solution to things like substance abuse or mental health problems. But many, many people have recovered. They just don't walk around talking about it very much. So I thought that was kind of encouraging. But again, it's a lot easier, right, if you can stop it before your life comes apart. I mean, Benjamin Franklin, right, said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It just makes sense. And even in healthcare and wellness, the concept of prevention is not a foreign idea, right? We know that cigarettes are probably going to lead to lung cancer. My father died of lung cancer because he smoked. So we know that a lot of habits that we do could lead to another disease. So in wellness, this concept of prevention is not at all unusual. It's not really discussed that much, though, around substance abuse or mental health. But there's no reason. It's a giant gap in our healthcare systems. Right? I love people who are in the recovery and the treatment business. I mean, God bless them. They're the EMTs on the front line of some very tough stories. Seriously, they're some of my best friends. But we need to complement that work with recovery. I mean, with prevention, and keep these things from happening before lives come apart. So I'm going through all of that, and I decided, well, I'll go look for books that talk about how do you live life using these recovery principles. And I didn't find a lot, so I wrote one. I didn't know I was supposed to be a writer until I had something to say, and I decided to write it down. And I'm still working full time, and this has taken several years of my life, but this is what got me thinking, why don't people just live life this way? Because this book takes the principles of recovery to the rest of the world. And it's not really about addiction and recovery. It's about living life better. Because that's what recovery is. It's, can you live life emotionally, socially, spiritually, and personally in a way that you can deal with life, right? So that you don't have to address your pain or have fun and excitement through a substance or an alcohol. The way to prevent addiction is to live life better. So that's an epiphany. That was a breakthrough for me. I mean, if I go to an AA meeting or a Celebrate Recovery meeting now, there'll be people who've been going to these meetings for 25 or 30 years. And it's not because they still need it to deal with the substance. That's just become how they live. So 5 years ago, I left IBM. I was with IBM for 38 years and founded a new nonprofit ministry called Steps Ministries. We provide practical resources to help people live life better, and we try to bring help, healing, and hope to those who need it. We do a lot of work with parenting, and so we've been up here in Walker County for the last year and a half. The Walker Area Community Foundation was kind enough to give us a grant, but it's just like I was telling some of y'all before, it's my home away from home now, I think. So, in fact, this afternoon, we're going to travel around different parts of Jasper and make some videos that maybe y'all will see later, trying to reach other people around us, with some of the help that we can provide for parents. So, we do online education, I write articles, we do videos, we have short courses. I'm kind of a nerd, right? So I just do the research into the areas of recovery, psychology, wellness, even neuroscience, the Bible, and I try to pick what are those best life principles that all of us can use that will make us live life better, and then make them easy to understand, and we deliver them to people, so that's what we do. The third epiphany is the best way that we can prevent addiction is through proactive parenting. And I mentioned that I started Steps 5 years ago. The book I wrote, I forget, 12 or 13 years ago. So I've been in this mode for 15 years or so. And I was living in Birmingham 8 or 9 years ago, and at that time I knew I was moving towards starting a nonprofit, and I was trying to figure out what it would be. And the youth pastor came to see me, and he said, Steve, I need to implore you that whatever you do, include a focus on parenting. He said, let me tell you what it's like at our local high school. And it's a typical suburban high school in Birmingham. He said, most of the kids will drink alcohol or smoke weed. That's like no big deal. The problem is they go from there to pills and sometimes from there to heroin. Occasionally, they overdose and die, and some of them commit suicide. Parents are scared to death. They don't know what to do, so they circle the wagons and they don't talk to anybody and hope that it goes away. I mean, that's a short version of a tragic story that's going on all over the place. So he said, can you focus on parents? So I said, well, why don't we give it a shot? And so a few weeks later, we did a Saturday seminar for parents of teenagers on how do you protect your kids from the problems they're going to face in high school. And the parents loved it. By the way, if I say that the material that we do is good and it's well received, it's not because I'm claiming credit, because I'm not actually reinventing anything, right? We find the best principles that subject matter experts say, and we try to make them easy to understand and put into practice, right? So I'm just saying, we've chosen things that seem to work for people, and they like the way that we delivered it. And so sitting in the audience of that group was the pastor of kids. And he said, hey, can you do that for moms and dads of younger kids? So, a few months later, we did another Saturday morning seminar called Proactive Parenting. Because if you move upstream of problems, the way to fix those is to live life better. And you can move that all the way up to when you're 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, right? If you raise kids to be balanced and self-aware and self-confident, they can learn to deal with life better. So that then when they're 16 and they're at a party and someone hands them a pill, they have a choice that they can make based on their character and their choices. So that's where proactive parenting came to be. And the concept of proactive parenting is just that, right? Parents are busy, right? The best parents are busy, and it's hard to keep up with all the things that are going on. So we just try to say, what are some simple things you can do to influence the development of your kids all along the way? By being intentional, thoughtful, and balanced. Intentional means you just, instead of waiting until you get the phone call, right, the tragic phone call, you notice, 18 months ahead that, hey, my son or daughter seems to be feeling anxious. Maybe we should be having conversations about that. Or I know in middle school and high school they're going to be facing temptations. Why don't I anticipate that rather than finding out they've been smoking pot for 2 years and now they're doing pills? So the concept of proactive parenting is just being thoughtful and balanced and intentional about how you do your parenting. And when you put these 3 epiphanies together, I think they can change a family, and they can change lives, and they can change a community. The best way to treat substance abuse is to prevent it. People can prevent addiction by living life better, and we can help kids live life better through proactive parenting. Those were epiphanies to me, and it certainly changed the course of my life. And so now, I guess till God calls me home, right? We're going to try to help other people say, hey, there's simple steps that we can take to make life better for ourselves and our kids. So critical questions I would ask anybody to think about is, the first sounds like a rhetorical question. It's not meant to be. Do you want your kids to be safe and happy? Even during the high school years when they're going to be tempted, even in spite of all the things they're going to face. So it's not a rhetorical question. I mean, every parent will say, of course I do, of course I do. The second question is a little harder. Are you willing to take steps for that to happen? In other words, a lot of parents, right, again, we're busy, but we'll build a plan at work and we'll build a plan for finances. We'll build a plan for our vacation, but we don't have a plan for parenting. Well, we should. And we try to make that easy to build a plan for parenting. So those were the 2 questions. Do you want your kids to be safe and happy? Are you willing to take steps to get there? And the third is where it really, really gets exciting. What if every parent in Walker County raised their kids this way? What would that do family by family to the community to take a problem that's not only systemic but generational in nature, right? So that's what we're talking about. What you're seeing now is it's a problem. On the left is a picture in Jasper. On the right is a picture from Birmingham. So I was at the Overdose Awareness Walk in Jasper, which is the one on the left. As you might guess, every name that's on that board is someone who's died of substance-related problems. You can see on the same thing on the walk in Birmingham, which is the one on the right. So there were 2,000 or 3,000 people at the one in Birmingham, and they were all there because they'd lost somebody. It's happening everywhere, and the statistics, unfortunately, bear this out. 3 out of 4 young people are going to use addictive substances. About 40% will abuse them. And now the number one cause of death starting at age 18 is fentanyl. Not drugs and alcohol, it's fentanyl, right? And you probably know that fentanyl is an opioid drug that's 50 times more powerful than heroin. And the amount and a few grains of it can kill you. And the people who don't care very much for your sons or daughters who are in the Mexican cartels who are putting these pills are putting fentanyl in everything. So at that walk, I met the sheriff of Walker County, and they had seized enough fentanyl in Jasper that day. I did the math, that could have killed 280 people. The other thing is half of families will have kids who have mental health issues or substance problems. It really is everywhere. So if it's you, don't think that you're unusual because it's everywhere. And this is the statistic that breaks my heart. 19% of young people contemplate suicide. That's 1 out of 5. 9% try it and actually execute it. But if you only remember one number, remember this one, because this is one of the reasons why we do what we do. 90% of those people struggling don't get help. They're either ashamed or embarrassed, or they don't know where to go, or they just don't. Wonder if that number changed. Wonder if, rather than 10% getting help, wonder if 20% got help. Wonder if 30%. Wonder if 70 or 80% got help. That would change lives and families and communities and our country. Because this is what teenagers are going through. We were talking before of, is it different now for teenagers? Yes, it is different now for teenagers. They have all the same, I think, trials and temptations we did, but the culture is moving fast. And, by the time they're in high school, if they watch commercials, they think, wow, people do drugs and drink alcohol. That's just what everybody does. That's what commercial would tell you. And the internet and social media and phones are perpetually bombarding them with signals that tell them that everybody else's life is perfect when it's really not, right? What kids put on Instagram or TikTok is not real life, right? They're portraying an artificial version of that. But if you're 15 years old and you're a little bit insecure and you think that everybody else is doing well, it makes you feel bad. But the real situation is everybody feels that way. They just don't put that on social media. And any kid can get drugs and alcohol very, very easily these days. So there's a lot of pressure on young people. So why do they use substances? My son started drinking when he was 14. And when he told me the story of why he did, I'll give you the short version. He said, well, Dad, I just wanted to fit in with this group. And once when I drank, it made me feel the way I wanted to feel. I started drinking when I was 15. By the way, these days it's normally 13 or 12 when they start. So that's what I thought. It made me feel the way we want to feel. That's a statement that changes people's lives. People do what they do to feel the way they want to feel. Kids want to fit in and be accepted, and that's an extremely understandable, powerful force for a young person. They really, really want to be in a group and they want to be accepted. Sometimes they just want to have fun and have excitement. And if they don't think that drugs are a big problem, why not? So they may feel entitled, like, hey, I get to do what I want to do. If I want to smoke or drink, I could. Or they feel insecure, like, I want to be part of a group, and maybe that's the way to do it. With young people, anxiety and depression, anxiety is 70% higher with teenagers than it is with adults. And depression is as high or more. But young people don't feel like they're the only ones that are broken, when really we all are. It's very normal. It is okay not to feel okay. It really is. That's normal. But it's hard to resist temptations. It's hard for us to resist temptations. But if you're 15 and you're in a group and everybody around you is doing something, it's hard to be the one that says no. But at first, addictive substances are not the problem, right? If they have their first drink or smoke a joint the first time, guess what? It might actually be fun. It probably will be. They may even feel good. So they're thinking, it's not the problem. My son wound up going into recovery twice, the second time for a year. And when we were taking him into the recovery program, my wife and I were in one room where the significant others were, and the people going into the program were in another room. And the speaker in our room said, how many of y'all are excited that the people in the other room are going to cure their addiction problem? Well, we all raised our hand. And he said, well, that's not what they're talking about in the other room. In the other room, for those people, Alcohol and drugs are not the problem. They're the solution. In other words, we're going to talk to them about what problems are they trying to solve in life, and therefore why do they make the choices. So people do what they do for a reason, even if they don't understand that. And if you do the same thing over and over again, including drugs or alcohol, you are literally rewiring your brain around that behavior. It's a concept called neuroplasticity. Whatever you repeatedly think or repeatedly do, you are changing the chemistry and the structure of your brain. That's part of what makes things addictive in nature. So the best way to treat addiction is to prevent it. And this concept called neuroplasticity, if you're addicted, it's your worst enemy, but it can be your best friend. The things you repeatedly do, the things you repeatedly think about, you are changing the chemistry and the structure of your brain. And so that works for good habits as well. So for me, this is one of the saddest slides that I show, because I talk to many, many parents who say these things. Sometimes they've lost a son or daughter. I know someone who's lost both his sons. I know many people who've lost a son or daughter. And I've talked to hundreds who are in crisis. Very often they say, we didn't think it could happen to us. Or we didn't know his problems were that serious. Or when she became a teenager, it was harder to talk to her. Or when he was struggling, we just didn't know what to do. And the saddest is, we waited too late and we should have gotten help earlier. I hear this all the time. But if you look at those 5 statements, what do they all share? They're all preventable, right? You can't wave a wand and make these problems go away, but we can prevent those things, right? So that parents are prepared. And that's why we created education and training called PACES for Parents. PACES is an acronym. It stands for being prepared for the teenage years, being more aware of what's going on with your kids and helping them be self-aware, connecting with them even when they're teenagers when it seems to be harder, and being educated for the struggles that they're going to face so you can work with them to go through it, and then putting a few simple steps in place so that you have a parenting plan. That's what PACES for Parents is all about. And I'm going to very quickly introduce you to it, because I'm not just trying to encourage you about an idea. I really want you to take action, and that's why what I gave you before is you have 3 handouts that are with you. Each of those is a short version of an easy online course that we have. So you have one sheet that talks about all these 15 quick things I'm going to go through. And then if you go to the link there, you can get more information about it. There's nothing you're going to see that you'll go, wow, I probably never thought about that, right? Because some of the most profound wisdom in the world is both simple and familiar. But I promise that if parents that you know will do some of these things, their kids will be happier, they'll have more peace, they'll find more joy, and they'll make better decisions, and they will either prevent or delay or minimize some of these problems. Again, people are still going to die, I think. They are. And people are going to ruin their lives. But it doesn't have to be that 90% are not getting help. We can get more people more help, and we can save a lot of lives and change a lot of lives and change families. So a very quick fly-through of preparation is be prepared, right? And that's what this material is about, is be prepared, because your kids probably will face issues of some sort. So why don't you get them ready for it? Understand the concept of codependency. A codependency is when anyone, such as a parent, your sense of well-being is very much wrapped up into your kids. So probably every parent is codependent. But we tend to therefore take that to an extreme and either be controlling or enabling, right? And that's why we say proactive parenting is meant to be balanced. If you're controlling and you use either lecturing or preaching or anger to control your kids, you're just going to exasperate them. Right? If you are enabling and you let them do whatever they want to do and you protect them from the consequences of their bad decisions, you're crippling them from growing up and learning how to live life the right way. So understand the concept of codependency. And there are resources that can help. We've read dozens, hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours. So these are just some of the simplest, best principles. Again, they are simple and they are familiar, but they are that way because they've been proven to work, so that you are prepared and you don't say, we didn't think it could happen to us. This was our older son when he was young. He was smart. He was popular. He was a great athlete. And things changed for about for a decade or so later. So it can happen in any family, and it can happen in yours. Awareness. Understand their world, not your interpretation of your world, but their world. Help them develop self-awareness to know that it is okay not to be okay. And you can take an assessment so that you see the warning signs, right, of what's coming. So you know about it rather than getting the phone call. So that you don't say, we didn't think it was that serious. This was our son in junior in high school. He's the guy on the right. Popular. Looks like everything's going well here. He was well into his curve at this point. And 2 years later from this, his life had totally come apart, and he had crashed and burned, and that's when he went into recovery for a year. So, being aware takes work. Connection. Quality time comes from quantity time, so you have to invest in the relationship and improve communications. I wish I'd communicated better when he was growing up, right? I tended to lecture and preach, right, rather than trying to speak to him in the way that he wanted to communicate. We all have blind spots that we can all address. And we have a module called What Every Teenager Needs to Hear, because no matter what, your son or daughter needs to know, and they need to hear it from you, that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be anxious or depressed, and they can get better. But they have value, they have a positive future. But their choices are important, and some choices have consequences, and that's why you're going to put boundaries in place. So don't be one of those parents who said we couldn't communicate. This is a picture that of me and my son when he was young. When he was a teenager, we had an argument, and he took it and tore it this way to make a point. And I kept the two pieces of this picture for years because it broke my heart that he was sending me that message, right? But it's important to connect to your son or daughter. Education. If they're going through problems as a teenager, it's probably their first time. It's probably your first time as well. So why don't we equip them for the situations ahead of time waiting until they happen? Understand what boundaries are. Boundaries are boundaries help our kids be happy and safe. They really do. But you need to communicate them clearly. They need to be fair, consistently communicated, and reinforced 100% of the time, calmly and with love, right? Done that way, kids understand them, we have levels of education you can use no matter how old your kids are. So keep getting educated so that you don't say, we didn't know what to do. This was my son, I guess he's a senior. And, in baseball, right, we have a coach who spent a lot of time learning things, and they teach them to their team, and then they practice them over and over again. We need to do the same thing as a parent, So he could have been a very good pitcher. He just had other priorities in mind at the time. And so he made choices that took that opportunity away from him. Finally, the final S in PACES is for steps. This says help them build an identity. Well, what does that mean? That means that each of your kids is different, right? One size does not necessarily fit all in raising the kids. They're all different. They all have their own identity. So help them embrace that and understand that. And then also know that if you have 2 or 3 kids, one or more of them will have a crisis. They'll have anxiety or depression or drug abuse or something. The odds are that it will. So don't act like it's not going to happen, but prepare for it. And then just have a few steps in place so that you're proactive and you have a plan in place. So you don't wait until you get the phone call. And the phone call that says they're hurt or they're dead or they've killed somebody else or they're in jail. My wife's best friend, their son, who used to come over to our house all the time, is partway through a 12-year sentence because he got on the highway after drinking with his friends and killed a woman. My son went to 3 funerals of the people he used to hang around with. Don't wait too late. This is my son now. That was about a year ago. He's doing well. He married a wonderful lady. He's doing great at his job. And this always kills me, but I'm going to try it again. This is the card he wrote the night that he got married. And this was a year and 2 months ago. He said, Mom and Dad, it's been a crazy ride, hasn't it? Sometimes it feels good to reflect on the journey. Y'all never lost faith in me. Through all my ups and through all my downs and screw-ups, you kept believing in me and giving me your unconditional support. I wouldn't be in this position this weekend without it. Today, your son is getting married and starting a life and family of his own, but I'll never forget what got me here in the first place. I'm honored to be your son, and I love you immeasurably. a lot of what I teach about is about the mistakes that we made. We made lots of mistakes. And that's okay. You don't have to be a perfect parent. You really don't. But we hung in there and we persevered. And even though we made mistakes, he knew that we were going to be there for him and he knew that we loved him. So you don't have to be a perfect parent. You really don't. Just be proactive. So we talked about these 3 epiphanies. We can build a prevention movement in this county. And the best way to treat addiction is to prevent it. And you can prevent addiction by living life the right way. And we can do that with our kids. We have built a landing page for Walker County, and this is a piece of it because it's a serious issue everywhere, and it's certainly a serious issue here. This is a picture of one of those sheets that you have. So we make these available to anyone in Walker County, right? If there's a group or somebody we can help, let me know. I'll come speak to them or talk to them, and we'll bring them some of these sheets. All of this is free for any parent in Walker County. We're trying to reach the 90% who aren't getting help and help them to take a step in the right direction. That sheet you have, in the middle you see there's a very simple web page you can go to where each of those 3 areas are explained. You see a 1-minute video on why this area is important, a 1-minute video on what you can do, and a 2-minute article on how to go about doing it. Very simple, easy to understand. And then if you want to go deeper into each of these areas of preparation, awareness, connection, education, and steps, we have an online learning center where they can go deeper. So levels of resources. Anyone in Walker County just needs to know one place to go, which is Steps for Active Parenting / Walker Co-Parents. This, by the way, this is written on one of those sheets of paper I gave you. Steps for Active Parenting / Walker Co-Parents. It goes to that sheet on the left. And not only does it go to it, it goes to landing pages for what you have, so that how to raise teenagers, how to handle a crisis, biblical parenting, and how to deal with anxiety. And it also gets them into paces for parents. We would love for every parent in this county to know that this place is here. And hopefully, some of them will use the resources ahead of time proactively. Some of them will wait until there's a crisis. But that's okay. It's better than nothing. But we want everybody to know that this is available to them for free. And frankly, y'all can help do that. Because what if every parent in Walker County said, we were prepared for the teenage years. We were aware of what they were going to, and we stayed connected to them through those years. Even when they were struggling, we were educated on what to do, and we helped educate them on to understand what to do. And we had steps in place in a parenting plan. What would happen in 10 years if every parent said that? So we're almost done. But we can start a prevention movement in this county, right? Steps can do all these things on its own, right? We can do Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and send emails out to people, and we're about to launch a YouTube channel. I will speak to any group that will have me. So whether it's your church or your school, let me know. I'll be here. We can hand out materials the way that we did. We can do webinars. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. This really needs to be a village. It really does. The good news is, in Walker County, we've had a wonderful sponsor with the Walker Area Community Foundation. So, Paulette, I've been bragging on you before you got here. I said, this is the best foundation I've ever seen. I mean, yes, they are our funding source, but they care about the community, and they help connect people together in it. So we do have a partner there. Wouldn't it be great if we could get people in churches to pay attention to this? That is First Presbyterian and St. Mary's that did have us come in. And I mentioned we went to Long Memorial not too long ago in Cordova. Any church that wants me to come in, and in a church, I can do a biblical parenting seminar if they prefer, right? But why don't we do that? Wouldn't it be nice if we could get the word out through places like Daily Mountain Eagle? They were good enough to run a 6-part series on how to handle a crisis with your kids. So it just finished up. So that information was available. We are willing to do seminars local. We've done some in the Jasper Civic Center. We're trying to connect to a lot of other nonprofits. Walker Area Community Foundation has a nonprofit council, and there's one called the Healing Network. But the big question will be is can the Kiwanis Club help get us into places and do that? And that will be y'all's question to decide. Because we'd also love to have more presence in the schools and in the healthcare and in businesses and through the government. But we need connections to help us do that. So I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but I would make the request and challenge you. I would love for this club to take this on as a signature project. It doesn't have to be hard. We have in the online education, we know where to send parents to just to help us get the word out. You know, either pick a day or a week or a month and say, you know, this is a proactive parenting month on behalf of Kiwanis, or whatever you want to do. Just if you help us get the word out or connect us into other companies, you are directly helping change people's lives and maybe families and generations. So it doesn't have to be hard. I'll leave that to y'all, but that would be awesome if you could. Individually, you can do things. If you are a parent or you know parents, please use some of these resources. Again, these are just the tip of the iceberg, what you've been given. Point everybody you know to it. If you are a grandparent and now all of a sudden your kids are having kids, talk to them about it. The sooner you can start, the better it is. Also, in just a few minutes a week or 45 minutes a month, to give us feedback on some of these things. See, because we want to design content and training so that the people of Walker County, it best fits their needs. But we need some input, and just a little bit of input from y'all could help. By the way, all of you have a feedback sheet. Please leave that when you go. If you don't put anything on it, please leave it anyway. I hope 100% of you will do that. If you'll give us a little feedback, that would be great. Putting your name on it and email is optional. If you put your email on it, that just means you'll get a blog with material on this and other topics every week. That's all it means. I promise we'll protect your email. But if you don't want to put your email, that would be great. But please, give us some feedback on this and share your thoughts. But mostly, use these resources and share them with everybody you know. Because this is a very serious business that we're in. Kids are dying all over the place. I mean, when I talked to Adam Hicks, who's pastor at Desperation Church a few weeks ago. He said, Steve, I cannot tell you how many funerals he's done for overdose deaths and so forth. And fentanyl is making the death, like I said, it's the highest death rate for any cause starting at age 18. But it's also changing lives. And even those who make it through, they're changed for it. And so that life is less than it can be. But also remember, the best way to prevent these problems is to help kids live life better so that they'll find more peace and joy in life, right? You don't have to teach them all the drug lingo, right? Just help them live life better and do that through proactive parenting. So you can change somebody's life by sharing information with them or using this, and we can make a difference one person at a time, one family at a time, and one community at a time. We can change people's lives and prevent addiction a step at a time. Thank you very much.